everyone, I'm Colombe and this is Andrea.
Hello.
And we are the hosts of How to Build a Country. Today is season 0, episode 4, and we'll talk about the fact that the lack of a global country actually benefits the 1% and the 1% only.
Which is outrageous.
Exactly. And for this, a bit of hints, we'll talk about space and multinational companies not paying their taxes. But before, let me do a quick recap.
Go for it, Colombe.
Andrea and I are the co-founders of Atlas, which is the global movement working to create a system that is democratic of global governance. A democratic global country, basically. If you watch episode 1, 2, and 3 of season 0, you'll get to understand why we need to create a global country. Because, for example, countries and borders are messed up. We need to get rid of them. Second, supranational governance already exists. It's just not democratic. And it's not a new concept, the idea of wanting a democratic global country.
2,000 years old, right?
Exactly. The Legion League 2,000 years ago started working on it. And it's amazing and beautiful. And I love this example. And today, we look at the fact that simply not doing it means more unfairness, less equity. And it means the rich getting richer and the poor not getting any richer.
So let's start with a very simple example. Who's gaining from this situation? Let's look at taxation, money. Everyone knows what we're talking about. Sadly enough, multinationals are gaining so much money from the fact that there is not a global taxation system. Meaning they take money, they put them in their pocket instead of going to all of us. Concrete numbers. Amazon Europe had 44 billion in sales and paid 0 income taxes as a company. Zero euros.
For 44 billion euros. That's insane.
44 billion.
I pay more taxes than they do. It's crazy.
It's shocking. And then we look at the US alternative. So the US of Amazon, the headquarters, the global Amazon, they paid only 6% of income taxes. So instead of paying like 20% like all other companies, they managed to get discounts and managed to get like in loopholes, and they only paid 6%.
And it means that in the US, they gained $5.2 billion that they should have paid in corporate federal income taxes in 2021.
Which is crazy. 5 billion.
So basically, we're taking Amazon, there's a lot of others, but the biggest and richest companies in the world, by avoiding to pay the taxes where they operate, where they make profits, where they make sales, actually gain more money. $5.2 billion in the US. 0 taxes paid on how much? 44 billion euros of sales in Europe? It's insane.
Incredible.
And this is just a vicious cycle. They keep on operating this way, and we'll look at the fact that the UN and other intergovernmental organizations do not have the capacities or competencies to have a global tax system. They can't levy taxes, which is fundamental. And as a result, those companies can exploit loophole after loophole. And we pay more taxes than they do in Europe.
Which is crazy. And countries are powerless or actually willing to accommodate this to attract workers and some profits from this company. So we are in a shitty situation. We must fix that. Let's take another example. Space. Colombe, do you want to go for it?
So space is one of my favorite topics ever.
I knew that.
I watch way too much space fiction. I watch every single Netflix movie on this ever. But it's also because I find it to be a fascinating topic. I think that space has so much potential to teach us how to rethink our reality. I've read so many quotes of astronauts who go to space and say that once they look at Earth from such a distance, suddenly borders make no more sense.
Absolutely.
And I agree. However, we're replicating the exact same issues on space than we have on Earth, including the 1% gaining from the system. So let's go through it. Andrea, you did a bit of research on mining. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, basically, many companies and big countries like China and the US are already getting ready to mine the moon. So the moon is a celestial body. It has no flags. It is, if anything, responsibility of the whole of humankind. And actually, some of these companies and some of these countries have decided they can basically extract natural resources from the moon and resell them or use them for transportation or whatever they want without consulting anyone else. Neither me nor you or the United Nations or any representative body.
And how much are they gaining from this?
So there are many estimates, but for sure there is $1 billion effort, or they can gain billions of dollars out of it, and probably way more, because being able to create bases on the moon and extracting resources will also open the gateway to Mars and many other exploration that will massively benefit private corporations and those countries able to reach it.
Exactly. So let's look at those countries. So space exploration is not available to all. Space exploitation is not available to all. You have very few players in this field. So China and the US are racing to make billions, right, from mining the moon.
Yeah.
And then you have a few companies that are working on it as well, such as iSpace and Astrobotic.
Yes.
And in 2020, NASA announced that it was looking for companies to mine the moon and would pay $25,000 for a pound of dirt.
Incredible.
So we see it's not like all countries have the capacity to go to space. It's not like we're sharing our resources. It's not like we have a treaty, an intergovernmental organization looking at it and being like, look, we'll do this together. We're going to understand the rules of the game together and we'll share the profits. No, you have China, the US, and a few others going there, giving a lot of money to a few companies that are going there first as well. It's not only countries. My biggest fear in the world is having Bezos in his penis-shaped rocket actually building real estate on the moon one day and it not being available to the rest of us. Sorry for the penis-shaped rocket. It's just I can't get it out of my head.
Clear.
It's insane. But so we see companies already doing this. And then I think there's another topic for space, which is tech.
Absolutely.
So again, I'm a huge fan of space.
She's a huge fan.
So I spend too much time on NASA's website. My dream is to become an astronaut, but it's another topic of conversation. And I read that a lot of technology that we use today has been invented because of space exploration. So basically the fact that we have to make humans live in such a hostile environment or survive in such a hostile environment means that there's lots of experimentation, iterations, and so on that happen. So for example, in today's world, we have some really cool tech like CAT scans or like insulin pumps or wireless headsets, what you use to listen to music, that we only have because of space and the tech that was created for space, for humans in space. I'm not just saying this because it's really cool and space is clearly the coolest topic ever, but because if you think about the fact that very few countries will have the capacity to go and that a few companies will monopolize space and monopolize our resources, it also means that the innovation that comes out of it will belong to very few countries or companies and once more will not reach the rest of the world. So again, it's the 1% that is beneficiating and not the rest of us. And if you need just one concrete image of what this could look like, just think of vaccines, right? Not into space, but think of vaccines. During the pandemic, a few countries had access to them, and the rest of the world had to wait years to have access to them. And people were dying, and we were not sharing. So it's not like suddenly, Musk or whatever country will be like, oh, yeah, we get this. Use it.
They never do that. They never do that because they are wonderful principles, but then when money matter and when they start becoming very important and having power because of what they gain, they won't let it go. And we saw it exactly. Vaccine is the perfect example. Thank you, Colin. We didn't mention it before, but I think that it's a shame for our generation what went on with the COVID-19 vaccine. And basically we're applying the same logic to any other thing we're doing.
Exactly. So basically, the fact, before we explain what we're actually losing out of it, because when you have only some people benefiting, the rest of the planet loses. But before we go into it, the facts on taxation and space, and there are many more examples, that we don't have, a global taxation system to levy taxes in a fair manner on multinational companies where they operate and redistribute it in a fair manner, means that they get richer because they don't pay their taxes. For space, this is the same. The fact that we don't have a global government that is elected with citizens participating that say, look, space is an issue for the whole of humankind. Let's get together. Let's decide how we will go about it. And let's do it in a fair manner for all. That doesn't pollute, that doesn't do all of this. Means that a few companies and a few countries get to do it. And as a result, it beneficiates just them.
It's a massive problem.
So what are we losing? Think 2 seconds, imagine for 2 seconds, Andrea, in your head, public services. So we are both in the UK. What are some public services that you would like to see them having more money so that it would beneficiate you?
Oh my God. I immediately think about the National Health Service, the fact that
it's completely underfunded.
It's very difficult to get treated, and there are people dying because of the fact that the health services do not have enough resources. And we're still lucky. In a country where there is a lot of it, and there are way worse situations across the planet. But it's clearly something that would enjoy a lot more money.
So the NHS, I can think of a lot of other topics. We could pump money into the NHS. We have enough resources across the world to do so. We just don't get them. So let's look at taxation again. In 2019, the world was deprived of $500 billion.
How much?
$500 billion.
Wow.
because of a lack of global taxation, because of the fact that multinational companies did not pay their fair share of taxes.
$500 billion is incredible. You told me in the other episode that with this you could basically quell poverty and hunger for 2 years with this amount of money.
Exactly. We have more than enough money. This is just multinationals. I'm not even talking about super rich individuals. I'm not talking about taxes on financial transactions. I'm talking about multinationals paying where they should be paying $500 billion.
And then you have Amazon paying 6% of taxes, when at the restaurant in the corner probably pay 20 or 25%.
Exactly. So we are losing out, because with this, you can solve hunger. We are losing out because they are gaining from it.
We're losing out so big.
And it's also creating a situation of a race to the bottom, because without a global authority that can look at it, say, no, those are the rules of the game. You have to pay taxes. You have to participate this way. You don't get to treat your workers this way, and so on. It's a race to the bottom, because countries are racing to attract such companies in their country to create jobs and so on. And as a result, are giving them tax breaks, tax benefits.
And again, this is just talking about multinationals, but then there's the same with like super wealthy people and so many other realms where basically the lack of a global structure push countries to do their worst to attract resources and people.
Exactly. And then it also makes you think, we won't get into this, but it also makes you think about how, as a result, those companies are gaining a lot of political power, because they get to pick and choose where they put their headquarters, where, and so on, which is insane. It's actually insane.
And also, the money that they move is bigger sometimes than GDP of countries.
Yeah.
So obviously they have a weight that is outstanding, and they are not democratically elected, they are not democratically responsibilized, so they can just, move around and do what they want and move workers and create massive disasters. Like the fact that 500 billion euros or dollars are lost every year. If we think about space, it's exactly the same. We said it before, but basically because of the fact that space is only accessible to some people and some very powerful corporations, some very powerful countries, everyone else is excluded from the benefits that space can bring. New technology, as Colombe mentioned, the idea of frontier, of exploring, so the beauty of going to space, that it's still like something that motivates humankind to do a lot of great things. And in general, simply resources. So all these things are being hoarded by a few companies that are simply the fastest and the biggest that can go there. Because they get there, they become bigger and even more established, and will leave out many of us from the benefits that celestial bodies and space exploration can bring to humankind.
And I think even worse than this, we'll recreate the exact same issues that exist on planet Earth in space. Because if you have always the same countries and the same wealthy individuals or companies that rule the world just like here, they will recreate the same issues. So pollution. Right now we are polluting space with a lot of debris that are not being collected. There's very little regulation on this. And it's the same companies, the same bodies, the same countries that have destroyed our environment on Earth that we still need to save and are still not doing it. So we are recreating the exact same issues. And think then, because here we're talking a lot about money, think of inequalities. Those are countries and companies that are responsible for some of the biggest inequalities on the planet. Some of the biggest. The US is a country with some of the highest level of inequalities between its citizens. Amazon is creating working conditions that are insane, but if you look at the wages of its workers, some of them, you saw all of the scandals. Some of the workers in factories have to sleep like in tents outside.
Then you have China that is actually conducting a genocide, or allegedly so. So, they are very, very bad players here. Is there some light at the end of the tunnel? Apart from what we are building, that I think is the biggest light of all, but is there something else happening?
There is some light, but I want to go poetic for just 1 second.
Go poetic.
So both for taxes and for space, I think there's something beautiful about them both. A friend of mine told me once that her father told her that paying his taxes was one of the biggest pride he could have. And it changed my way of looking at paying my taxes. It was actually when I was trying to pay them and struggling and complaining. She told me, he told me that when he pays his taxes, he realized how much he gained from the system and from all of the services that he had access to, and the fact that now it's his time to support others and still beneficiate from the system. So it's a pride you participate in the democratic and solidarity life of your country, and it's the most beautiful thing ever. And I think with space, it's the same. We look beyond ourselves. We're not just focusing on a little, belly button, but we're actually looking to the outside and saying, what is happening? Are we alone? What are the resources out there? Can we go beyond what we know? What can we learn? It is incredibly beautiful if it is done well, in a fair manner, that enables equity to exist for me. And that's why we picked those two topics for today's live. We could talk about climate, about fossil fuels, about all of this. But it is incredible to think that if you can tax appropriately multinationals, it means that you have a political power to create equality, to create equity, to end, suffering and so on. With money, with taxation, with fiscal policy, comes an enormous amount of political power to solve our issues. The lack of it means that you are powerless. And it's the same in space. So I just wanted to go there to show a bit the importance. It's not just that it's unfair. It's not that it pisses me off that I pay more taxes in Europe than Amazon does. It's insane. But it's also that it deprives us from basically solving our issues and living better and living in a responsible society where we can be proud of paying our taxes, where we can be proud of looking to space and saying, look, I voted on this mission going because I know that this might help us in getting some tech to solve cancer. Or because I know that we might find new resources and understand where we come from in a completely different manner. And I had my say. And I may not agree, but I had my say. And I got to decide. So I think that's why I wanted to bring those about. It's incredibly beautiful.
It is. And by the way, disclaimer, Colombe is not employed neither by tax authorities nor by NASA. She's just like that. But
I'm not getting paid for this.
I fully agree with you. I think that you encapsulate perfectly the spirit of what we are doing and the reason why we are so enraged by this. Because we are, it's something that we don't talk about. The fact that we are losing out so much money to tax avoidance because of the lack of a global system, that people are dying of hunger in 2022. Or the fact that we are looking the other way while Elon Musk is putting SpaceX satellite in orbit and basically blocking the view to astronomers, researchers, without being held accountable for it. And again, maybe if there was a vote, we would decide, yeah, it's better to have internet everywhere than exploring
But we would also
space.
be able to hold him accountable.
Exactly. And to decide together. Right, like this, he filed a patent with the US authority, they approve it, and now he can pollute the sky. And we can't say anything about it.
It's insane.
There is hope. There is always hope. So let's focus on that for 1 second. In terms of taxation, we know that the G20, so the group of the 20 biggest economies.
Can you name them?
No. More or less. They actually decided to come together and endorse a plan for a minimum threshold of 15% for company income taxes across the planet. 15% is very low, let's be clear. It's just above what is normally considered a tax haven. Fiscal paradise. Normal countries have like 20 or 25% as company taxation. So it's not great, but it's a step into the right direction. It's kind of endorsing the idea that we need something global, that we cannot just fend for ourselves, because this race to the bottom is very negative for the planet as a whole.
And this can happen in a few ways, right? The first one is you elect a global government, pretty logical, right? You build something to administer common resources and so on, and it creates a fiscal division. So I know it sounds out there, but think of the United States of America, right? It started with states that then decided to unite to create something bigger. Exactly what we're saying.
Exactly.
And together, they actually created a federal tax system and a state tax system. And you have income taxes on companies, on individuals that go to both levels. And this way, the federal level can do its work.
Their program, yeah.
Exactly, and the state can administer its competences. It's pretty simple. We are advocating for exactly the same thing. You should have a taxation at the national and at the global level. And then each level is in charge of certain competences that it makes more sense for, such as climate change and environment should be global, space exploration should be global. Other stuff can be national, local, regional, whatever you want. So that's what we think is the solution, a global tax authority. How do we get there? We'll get there in a second. Let's now talk about space, right? What is the solution for you for space?
I mean, for space, first of all, we should have new treaties. You should have new agreement between world powers as a first step to actually regulate the fact that people cannot mine the shit out of the moon just because they're there. That's the first step, and that should happen today, tomorrow. But apart from that, the fix is very similar to what Colombe mentioned for taxation. We should have a democratic global system to actually deal with space exploration. So basically a democratic global governance that has the competencies and the ability to pull together resources, research, send space mission. It would also mean to save so much money and to be so much more efficient in what we do. Because right now there are, group of countries working together, and many that don't want to work together. But again, the space, please, let's not bring our stupid human problems to space. We could actually explore together and go farther and faster in just a few years.
So how do we get there, right? Those are beautiful ideas. A global tax system, a space agency where I get to be an astronaut. No, sorry, that's not the topic.
That's not the topic.
Gets to regulate space.
That's the next live.
that's another live. We'll talk about this. Send me your tips. No, how do we get to actually regulate global topics? Again, we need the global governance, but a lot of countries are not really up for it. So at Atlas, the global movement, we're doing something completely crazy.
We are.
In 2023, we are starting consultations across the world. So we want to hear from you, from the people of the entire world. What do we need as global governance? Who are we to say what we need? Why is it a few old dudes in a room deciding what we need? Doesn't make any sense. What do we need? What competencies should exist at the global level? Is it space? Is it regulating Twitter? What do we need to happen?
The second year, we take these beautiful ideas, we package them in a campaign, and we go to the United Nations and we ask them to become what we want. And I know it's very ambitious, but there is a wonderful moment. There's going to be the election of the next leader of the United Nations. It's an undemocratic election, let's be clear.
It's a selection.
It's a selection done by a few countries. But we can still propose a candidate, we can still propose our ideas and try to hammer it through the system. And democracy can prevail. So maybe there is a small percentage that we're actually going to prevail and see the United Nations become what the people of the world dream of. But we also know that it's very unlikely. So what do we do next if we fail?
If and when we fail, we build it ourselves. Who said that governance cannot be built from the people? The people start revolutions, the people build countries, the people build the systems we exist in. So we started. We use new tech to actually create it. There's an example that I love, which is the Tibetan administration in exile. So China is occupying Tibet, but Tibet elects a parliament, an executive body in exile to administer some competences like cultural activities, educational stuff, and so on. And they levy a voluntary tax until they can regain access to the territory. Actually, it's like more than 90% of Tibetans in exile pay this voluntary tax. And as a result, it has a budget. So maybe we start with voluntary taxation. It can be 0.1% of income, anything to give it power. And slowly but surely, we build a strong global governance capable of actually dealing with those global challenges.
That's it. We got a plan. So thank you so much for following How to Build a Country or How to Build a Global. This is episode 4. You can find the other ones on our YouTube. And next week, we're going to explore an exciting new topic that is going to be revealed on Monday in our live.
Exactly. In the meanwhile, subscribe to the channel, comment, share, because sharing is caring. Check out the links for our work. And please send me all of your tips on how to become an astronaut.
We love you all.
So intense.